So this year we did it a little different. Many of you know, we have this thing called Team 2020, which is taking a hard look at our budget. One of the recommendations that we received from a number of employees was to cut the Values Conference. Well, we didn't want to wipe out the Values Conference, so we've cut it back a little bit. So we went from 3 days down to 2, but I'll tell you, when you look at the agenda over this 2 days, it is by far more powerful per day than it's ever been. So we have a great lineup over today and tomorrow of great speakers, and I think we're going to take away just as much from this Values Conference as we ever have in the past. So everybody, I appreciate everybody's attendance. It looks like it's going to be another great Values Conference. But I'm not here to do the speaking. I will be doing that to close it. Just a little plug for a commercial for mine. I'm going to talk about values at the Values Conference, a novel concept tomorrow. What I would like to do, I have the great pleasure of introducing our first speaker. He's been doing this for 13 years. He's given over 1,000 speeches. That's daunting. He's a certified professional speaker and author. He just completed his first book, The Force Multiplier, How to Lead Teams Where Everyone Wins. He's a former TV host, a corporate relationships expert, a musician, a husband, and a dad, as well as a motivational speaker. So get ready to receive a lot of great information, to hear motivation, and most importantly, get ready to experience a transformation. It is my pleasure to introduce Tony Chapman. Tony?
Thanks, appreciate it. Morning. So a few things. Let me prep you for the day, because I'm the first speaker. So you'll notice, number one, I'm not standing behind the podium. That's not going to happen. Part of my job is to give you great information. Part of my job is to give you great inspiration, which means this is as low of energy as I get through the entire day. So prepare yourself, okay? I'm going to be moving at a fast pace. I will start sweating. Don't worry, that's normal, okay? But this is not a spectator sport. So I need you to participate with me. Can you do that? Yes. That means there will be times where I ask you a question. It is not rhetorical. I want you to answer. Can you do that? Yes. There may be times when I want your input, or I may want you to work together. I actually want you to do that, not sit there with a funky little attitude like, I'm not doing that, okay? So can you do that? Yes. There may be even times where I tell a joke and it's not funny. What do you think I want you to do? Hysterically, like it's the funny. How many of you have ever been married or dated in a long-term relationship? Raise your hand. So you've laughed at stuff that wasn't funny before. You know exactly how to do that. In fact, I want everyone to stand just for a second. Everyone just stand up. So on the count of 3, I want everyone to laugh. I don't care how fake it is. That does not bother me, but I want everyone to do it. Now, if someone doesn't do it, we'll do it over again, class, because guess what? By the time you figure out who I am, I'll be out of town. Don't really care, okay? So on the count of 3, one quick laugh. 1, 2, 3. You guys can go ahead and sit down. Or Sherry, I highly recommend maybe you need a relationship class next year. We'll deal with that. Okay, so let me answer the first question that should be on your mind. What in the world is a corporate relationship expert? Well, other than being one of the most important relationships that a company can have to ensure its success not only in the present but in the future, and a term I totally made up, just so you know, the best way for me to explain it would be to take you back in time. When I entered the workforce, I was what you call a good worker. How many of you can kind of picture a good worker? You know what it means to be a good worker? In case you don't know what it means to be a good worker, here's what it means. I actually showed up on time with a good attitude, and, brace yourself, I did my job. I thought everyone was a good worker. No idea. After a period of time, my boss came and gave me what I call the pitch. The pitch goes like this. Tony, you're doing a great job. We'd like to talk to you about your career path. Here's what we're thinking. We're going to give you a few people to supervise. All you have to do is to get them to work just like you're working, and everything will go well. Don't worry. It'll be easy. I call it the pitch because here's what they don't tell you. They don't say, oh, and by the way, there's 3 other people who really want to be supervisors, but they're not ready. So they're going to be mad, but not at us. They're going to be mad at you because we chose you over them. So you're going to have to figure out how to deal with their negative attitude, all while learning how to supervise them. Not to mention, you know, Tony, you're younger than a lot of people around here. You know, youth has a really negative stigma in the workplace. There are people who aren't going to respect you, not because of what you've done, but simply because of your age. And you're going to have to learn to win them over, all while learning how to appreciate and value the experience that they brought to the workplace, while learning how to supervise them. All right, you know, so I normally don't talk about this. This is kind of one of those things that my closest inner circle knows about me. So most people don't know about this about me, but I'll share this with you. So I'm black. I know that's shocking for some of you, and some of you don't see color, but that's a different workshop. So, but here's what you have to understand. Do you know that there are people who never in their life have seen a person of color in a position of authority before? Just like there are people who've never seen a female, a person with a disability, someone with an accent, someone with a different orientation, ever in their life. So guess what, Tony? People won't just be difficult, some will be downright adversarial. And you're going to have to be the bigger person and win them over, all while learning how to supervise them. And then no one ever says, you see that guy over there? He's crazy. Right? Because there's someone crazy in every workplace, right? Raise your hand if you know the crazy person. Don't point at each other. But if you're sitting next to them, just blink a couple times, just so it's between us two, okay? Listen, if you don't know who the crazy person is, it's because it's you. But there's one in every workplace. So here's what happened. Immediately, conflict rose, morale dropped, and we struggled with productivity. Now, I knew I had a lot to learn about leadership, and I remembered that. But then later, some other pieces started to fall into place, because about a year or so later, I was preparing to go on a business trip to visit a client I'd never worked with before. And my manager pulled me aside and said, I need to prepare you for this trip because something happened a few years ago that you need to know. And I'm thinking, a few years ago? He said, yeah. An incident happened. It's a paper mill, and it's in a small town in Maine. Now, this paper mill is the driving economic force in this town. But something happened with some of the maintenance workers where they realized they weren't being paid fairly, and they didn't have, the right benefits. And so they banded together and they decided to strike. Well, eventually, the entire paper mill decided to have a strike. And if you don't know much about paper manufacturing, it's a 24-hour-a-day process. Very short amount of time, the paper mill couldn't afford it. Because, you think an average paper mill, when it's not running, is losing about $250 of profit per minute. And so very quickly, everyone got desperate, and so what the paper mill did is they put an ad in the paper. We're looking for paper machine operators. No experience necessary. We'll train you starting at $20 an hour. Now imagine that in a small town where your primary businesses are mom and pop shops. It got crazy because people took the ad. And all of a sudden in the paper mill, you started to see fights. You saw arguments. I don't mean just arguments, I mean fights, death threats. Productivity suffered. And it wasn't just within the mill. The entire town was affected by it. Friends became enemies. There were family members that no longer talked to each other. Churches split and businesses fell apart. And I remembered that. A couple of years later, I was working for another company, and we had a change in leadership. And with that change in leadership came some changes in our core values. And I was working in nonprofit, so people really took their values and the mission very seriously. And that change in values, that change in mission, hit people at their core. And I saw people function in ways that I thought, man, that's so irrational. That's not like you, but they were doing it. And arguments started to happen, and literally fights broke out at times, and people resisted change. And then I realized that whether it was me becoming a supervisor, or whether it was workers wanting fair wages and benefits, or whether it was a change in mission and culture, that the common denominator was change. And in each of those situations, conflict rose, morale dropped, and they struggled with productivity. And it turns out it's pretty normal. Whether you're talking about quality improvement or customer service, implementing new technologies, or even just changing culture, more often than not, change is not only an uphill battle, it falls apart. Conventional thinking is that, well, the problem is we don't plan for this well enough. We don't prepare. And so many people started really focusing on change management. And this idea that, what we really need to do is if we build the vision and start planning this change and we do it properly, that we can really cement this thing and make some amazing parts happen. But here's reality. Change doesn't fall apart on an organizational level. You and I make up the organization. And you and I either willingly change, resist change, or don't change. And so more and more I started to think about how much the people side of business affects everything. And that was the idea of becoming a corporate relationship expert. It's how we interact that drives the company, because it's our relationship and it's our attitudes that are the culture. And so I started thinking more about, well, how do we change? Because I had some opportunities to work with people when they're at their best and when they're at their worst. And so my wife was working on a project for her company, and we started thinking, well, how do we show a model to help people understand what it really means to change? And we read this quote, and it just sparked a thought. And we thought, you know what? Here's what change really is. Change is trying to get, I'm going to skip that, sorry, for time's sake. Oh, we're going to skip a lot of stuff. Change is trying to get from one trapeze to another. Have you ever seen anybody on the trapeze? We're in Vegas. Most of you have probably seen someone on a trapeze, right? And this slide's going to come up in a few minutes. I just realized I updated the slides. I think we had a little issue. If you're going to go from one trapeze to another, there's something you have to do. You've got to let go of that first trapeze, right? And then at some point, you've got to grab onto the other trapeze. But there's a problem. Most trapezes are not set up where you can grab both at the same time. There's space in between. A number of years ago, I was coaching my youngest son's baseball team. And we had a really good season, and so the manager said, let's have a party. We're going to take the kids out. And so we went to one of these places where they have like the trampoline rooms. They do trampoline dodgeball, trampoline basketball. And there was this really cool climbing wall. And everyone's like trying to do the climbing wall. And most are not making it. Some are doing okay. And my son's like, we got to do the climbing wall. So he goes up and he gets about halfway up. And he's like, Dad, try it. And now the whole time I'm watching how people climb. I'm listening to all the input that the people on the side are giving him. I kind of figured out a path. And so I got on and I thought, okay, I know to use my legs. I kind of figured this out. And I started going. And I'm making way more progress than I ever thought. And I got about 2/3 of the way up, and my son's like, come on, Dad, you got this. And I looked down, and I had this realization. I'm afraid of heights. And I just looked down 25 feet, and I'm holding on to this little thing, and I'm like, yo. But he's like, come on, Dad, you can do it. And now I'm like, my son, right? So focus, I keep climbing. And I got to the top. I'm like, everyone's like, great job. I'm like, cool. So then I'm like, okay, so I'm looking for the thing to start going back down. Like, no, just let go. I'm like, all right. See her with the rope? She's about 120 pounds. I'm not. That ain't gonna happen. But in my mind, I'm like, I can't. It took me longer to let go than it took to climb up the wall. Truth of the matter is, if I had both ends of the rope, I would rappel down. I could do that. But that unknown of what was in the middle, that limbo, makes it really hard to let go. And that, my friends, is the challenge for you and I, is letting go. Because when we go through change, we have to be able to let go. And here's the thing. We often think we're letting go of the past. That would be easy. What we have to let go is far different than the past. We have to let go of this thing called a comfort zone. See, our comfort zone is this area that we build in which we can reach a state of kind of equilibrium. And we can get things done with a fairly minimal amount of stress. That's what it's built for. And the cool things about comfort zone is once you really build it, it's easy to stay in it. It's actually meant to keep you in. So when we talk about comfort zone now, that's a little too nondescript. Let's make this more specific. Comfort zones have some very specific parts to them. We got a formatting issue. Beliefs. Your current belief set is part of your comfort zone. Emotions. Your habits. Your relationships. And your circumstances. All of those are part of your comfort zone. And yet, we often only think of our circumstances when we think of our comfort zone. And here's the thing. How many of you have ever heard of a motivational speaker before? Or something, right? They'll all tell you, you got to get out of your comfort zone, right? Here's the thing. Comfort zones aren't a bad thing at all. We need comfort zones. You can't be under stress all the time. But here's the problem. Comfort zones expire. They grow obsolete. And if we hold on to something that's obsolete, it begins to hurt us. It keeps us from growing. And so here's reality. Although today we're talking about change at work, we're also talking about change in life. Because you're not going to make it through life if you can't change. And life comes at you in such specific, strange ways that you have to be able to adapt, right? And you have to be able to bounce back. And you have to have a certain amount of resilience. And it comes from how we view change. So today I'm going to talk about change. So I want to start off with our emotions, right? Because our emotions really are a function of how we view change. And we have to go from viewing change as being our foe and making it our friend. So a number of years ago, I had a client say, hey, Tony, we want you to do this workshop on stress. I said, okay, that's really not my area of expertise. But they're like, well, here's the thing, Tony. Number one, we know you're an engineer from background, and we know that you will go ahead and do the research. But we also know that our people just love you, and they want you to do it. I said, okay, great. So I started talking to all my friends who did it, and they showed me this. It's called the stressor scale. The stressor scale is actually what psychologists use when you go in to see just how much stress are you under. But it's even more than that. Insurance companies use this when they're trying to figure out how much of a risk are you. And what they do is they say, well, okay, in the past year, what events have happened in your life? And they all have a numerical value, as many of you are looking through them. And if you add up that numerical value and it's under 150, then you're in a pretty good situation. But if it's between 150 and 300, there's a significant concern that there could be a health-related incident in your life in the next 2 years, about 50%. And if it's over 300, then we're really concerned. So I started looking at this, okay? Let's see, death of a spouse, 100, divorce, 73. Now, some people argue why they're in that order. Okay, that's a different workshop, all right? That's out of my lane, baby. You guys play with that on your own, all right? But I kept looking, marital separation, jail term, death of a close family member. And then I realized something. When people measure how much stress you're under, what they're really measuring is how much change has happened in your life. And they put a numerical value to it. And the crazy thing about it is, not all of the change is bad, right? Retirement, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Addition to the family, business readjustment. Some of the things you can't tell, change in financial status. But even the positive changes have an effect on your life. And they build up, and they have a cumulative effect, actually. Oh, this is the old one. Okay. What's interesting, I thought about this for a bit. Because I looked at it from my life, and I said, okay, what's happened in the last 9 months? Well, last summer, I was selected to be a certified speaking professional. It's actually a big thing. And so, I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up to where everything is on here. So I got to walk in front of most of my peers, and only about 15% of professional speakers ever reach this status. So it was a big deal. So it was outstanding personal achievement, 28. Turned out, though, at that same point in time, because my son had just graduated high school, my wife and I decided to move into the city. That city being New York. There's no New York stressor scale on here, by the way, but let's just say there's a number to that as well, okay? So that means all of a sudden we had a change in residence, which is 20, as well as there's another one, change in living conditions, 25. A month and a half later, my youngest son went off to school. Son or daughter leaving home, 29. There's no number for son or daughter coming back, by the way. Just thought I would throw that out there. In the middle of that, we decided from a business standpoint, it's time for me to be not just a speaker, but I get so many requests to actually consult with organizations to change their culture and to do other things. So I'd already added on a training component, but now, we're a full-out consulting firm, which means I had to start hiring people, which I had been avoiding. And so now, business readjustment, 39, plus change in work responsibilities, which is another 20. And then an interesting thing happened. Right after Labor Day, my wife calls me and tells me that her mother was just put in hospice and given 2 to 6 months to live. Change in a family member's health, 44. She made it 3 weeks and then passed. Death of a close family member. And because of our relationship, because we were very close, 16 years ago, she'd asked me to actually eulogize her at her memorial. So you can imagine all that was going on. Oh, by the way, did I mention that 90% of my clients are federal government? Did you know the government's been shut down for over 30 days? You could just say there's a number on there for that. I added up. You know what that number adds up to? 343. But it explains a lot. My wife and I have just these moments where just emotions would just go out of control. She used to talk to her mom twice a day, every morning, every evening. It explains that while we were at the funeral, or at the memorial, while we were planning it, there was so much stress. People were like, well, why aren't we having a mass? Why aren't we having a priest do this? Why are you being selected to do it? And her brother, at one point, was so volatile, I thought we were actually going to end up in a fight. I'm like, this is so not normal. That's exactly it. It's so not normal. Emotions were never meant to be a gauge for reality. And yet, too often, we rely on them. We use them as though this is what reality is. We go with our gut. We have these feelings. And that's not what our emotions were designed for. And let me tell you, when under stress, your emotions will betray you. And they'll betray not only you, they'll betray the people around you. And you'll have to deal with that, because there are people that when they're under stress, they're going to take it out on you and not realize it has nothing to do with you. I had just become a brand new supervisor. And I was having my first meeting. I was set. I was like, I learned from what everyone else is doing. I'm not doing those things. We're going to get through this. We're running. The meeting is going great. And then all of a sudden, I mentioned one minor change, because it was requested that our expense reports were going to be turned in 5 days earlier. So instead of on the 22nd, we needed to turn them in on the 17th, just so that accounting would have more time to deal with it. Minor, right? So I said that, and out of the corner I hear, what? I can't believe this. And time slowed down. It was like Matrix stuff, you know what I mean? It was like, and just for it felt like eternity. It's probably about 15 seconds, but I'm like, is this really happening? And so when it was done, I kind of shook it off and was just, okay. I didn't know what to do. I'd never dealt with this before. So kind of laughed, kind of played it off. And if that's ever happened to you, don't feel bad. No one ever told you it was coming. I'm telling you, it's coming. And you live in a world right now where change is imminent. We cannot escape change. You will be dealing with people at their best and at their worst. I'm going to skip a couple slides because I know we got to do that, okay? So just trust me for a minute. You're going to have to be able to take a hit, and I'm telling you it's coming. One of my favorite athletes growing up, I'm about to date myself, even though I was big into football and basketball, was a track star. There's a track star named Ronaldo Nehemiah, and he was awesome. Picture Usain Bolt, but for the U.S. No one could catch him. He was a hurdler. Unbelievable, right? In fact, he was the first hurdler to do the 100-meter hurdles in under 13 seconds. And at one point, at different stages in his career, he's held 8 gold medals. He was slated to be the guy at the 1980 Olympics, and we boycotted. And so in 1982, someone got this incredible idea. We should put Ronaldo Nehemiah in pads and have him play football. Think about it. No one could catch him. You'll notice they don't do that anymore. There's a reason. So he worked out for a number of teams, was picked up by the 49ers. And I'll never forget the interview. The reporter says, so Ronaldo, are you in any way concerned about the physical nature of football? He says, now I figure once I get that first hit and get knocked down, I get back up, I'll be all good. So they're playing the Falcons, and he's lined up in the left slot. And he runs a down and in instead of out, which he'd normally go. And in, so that means he ran about 12 or 15 yards and cut across the middle of the field where all of the hitting goes. The quarterback threw him the ball. He hit his hands, but he bobbled it. And as he's reaching for the ball, he got hit. I have never seen a body. Do you remember Rocky IV? where Drago hit Apollo Creed. You're like, oh my God, he's dead. I mean, like before you're like, oh my, I mean, he got hit so hard, you could see like his spirit pop out of his body, like look down like, whoa. And he just went to the ground and just laid there. And, you know, they tried to revive him. They looked at him. And, I mean, he's just there. Then after about 10 minutes with smelling salt, he wakes up. Turns out he wasn't dead. He wasn't even injured. He just got knocked out. He got up. He's like, and, you know, normally now that means, let's go. This meant, let's go to the locker room. It was a wrap. Now, he still had a 5-year career, but even his coach said that's the last time he ran in the middle. Because no one told him he was going to get hit like that. And let me tell you, you've got to be able to take a hit if you're going to thrive during times of disruption and change. It's going to happen. You with me? Second thing we have to deal with are our beliefs. So we dealt with our emotions. So the thing about our beliefs are we have to change how we think, how we view change, and what we tell ourselves. I'll give you a little quiz, help you understand this a little bit better. So I'm going to show you 12 words on the screen, okay? So pick a screen, they'll be there. I want you to remember them. Don't write them down. Just remember them. Ready, set, go. All right, write them down on something. Your phone, paper, whatever, write them down. Give you another 5 seconds or so. Okay. How many of you got at least 3? Raise your hand. At least 3. At least 3. All right, cool. At least 4? 5? 6? 7? 8? 9? 10? 11? But did you get the right words? How many got bed? How many of you got dream? Rest? Eat's a popular. How many got eat? Slumber's a little harder. How many got slumber? Yeah. How many got sleep? Sleep's not on there. So here's how this thing goes. And wait. Okay, so let me help you out. Those are, but I wrote down, I don't care what you wrote down. I asked you if you wrote sleep, okay? And this is not one of those tricks where it's 2 different slides. It's the same slide. Because I know some of you are like, oh, he cheated on us. Look, we're going to go back. See, it's the exact same one. They're still not sleep. I didn't trick you. You tricked yourself. Don't get mad at me. Okay, so here's what happened. Whether you go across or down, across, bed, dream, relax, rest, eat. Down, bed, rest, awake, night, dream, eat. Eat is the throw off. We remember things by association. And so, unless you have most of your meals in bed, which that's a different workshop, that's going to be just that little glitch in your subconscious that makes it harder to remember. Take that out, most people remember 2 or 3 more almost immediately. But because that's in there, it's almost impossible for people to remember it. So guess what they do? Fill in the blanks. So guess what we do during change? because we're letting go into the unknown. All the questions are not answered. And so we begin filling in the blanks. We begin filling our mind with all of the what ifs and the how abouts and the I thinks. And we take them from opinions to facts within our mind. And they're not true. And so if you're going to be effective during times of change and transition, if you're going to be effective during disruption, if you're going to be effective when things aren't within your control, you have to tell yourself things all the time. You have to control your thoughts. You actually have, like I have a paragraph, actually I have 3 paragraphs, that I've started to repeat every morning and every evening before I go to bed. Because I want to make sure that the right thoughts are in my mind. Because guess what? If I don't program my mind, someone else will. Marketers say that on average, we get about 4,000 marketing messages a day. Think about that. Every time you see a billboard, every time you see an ad, every time there's a pop-up, every time that someone wears a brand name, it affects you. And although in the beginning you're like, yeah, okay, I see it, over time, it begins to change your desires because that's what marketers do. And if you want to be effective, not just in change but in life, you have to start thinking like a marketer about yourself, and even about, like I do with my children, to make sure I'm programming their minds to be right. This is an important thing because this is really what marketers do. And they understand the power of repeating it. A few years ago, one of the most anticipated movies in history came out. Everybody was waiting for it. The Force Awakens. It was huge. People loved it, right? And yet, let's look at their budget. They spent $200 million on production. That's a lot of money to spend on production. You know that? That's why they sue everybody who tries to take their stuff. That's why if you look at all the pictures, those are me. Every character is me, so they don't try to sue me because they would. And even behind the mask, that's me, trust me. 200 million. They spent 40 million on salaries. But get this, on teasers and trailers, 22.3 million. And 223 million on marketing. When, if you really think about that, really the teasers and trailers are part of marketing. They spent more on marketing than they did to actually make the movie. For a movie that everyone already wanted to see. I mean, when the tickets came on sale, the servers shut down because there was too much flow. I have friends who are, C-suite executives that were out buying lightsabers. I mean, this thing was like, and yet they said, even though we know you want to see it, I want to make sure you see it. And not just once, multiple times. And that when you see a commercial on and you're with a friend and they haven't seen it, that you're willing to just immediately regurgitate how amazing the movie was. And so they just shoved it down our throats. That's what marketers do. That's what they spend their time, their money, and their energy on. So, as a friend, let me tell you, are you going to let them outmarket your brain? As those who are supervisors and managers in this room, if you're managing people during times of change, if you don't constantly fill people up with the true message, you're going to have an uphill battle. Because the minute there's a question, the minute there's insecurity, the minute there's doubt, the minute there's no understanding, the minute people lose control, they'll begin to fill the blanks. And you have no control over what they think. So you have to think like a marketer. You have to reprogram your mind. Does that make sense? Third thing. Here's where the fun comes, baby. So, I've been to some of the meetings, right? You know, the meetings where we're going to have this brand new change. It's going to be awesome. And, you know, everybody is sitting in the audience like it's bobblehead night, right, at T-Mobile Arena. Oh, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And the minute we walk out, I ain't doing that. Are you? Psst, no, man, I'm not doing. You know, I know what. Come on, you and I can be real. You know, no, shh, I won't tell anybody. I know what really happens. You have to be careful of your relationships. Our relationships are powerful. There's this book called Connected. It was amazing when I started to read it. Because what it began to say was, do you know that if you know someone who's divorced, you're statistically more likely to be divorced? If you know someone who's overweight, you're statistically more likely to be overweight. If you know someone who smokes, you're statistically more likely to smoke. But here's what's amazing. If you know someone who knows someone who smokes, you're more likely to smoke. If you know someone who knows someone who's divorced, you're more likely to be divorced. Because we're really connected relationally. And it's a powerful, powerful thing. Because what happens is we're part of each other's comfort zone. You're part of my comfort zone right now. Do you understand that? And everyone you know is part of your comfort zone. But that's not the real challenge. So, years ago, I was speaking, and I was in Bermuda. It was one of my first professional speeches. And I'm in the middle of my presentation. And all of a sudden, I had this crisis of conscience. Because this was a motivational event, and we had 800 people, and yet I had completely let myself go physically. And I'm sitting here thinking, how can I tell them this and look at myself? And so, in the middle of my presentation, I actually stopped and said, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how can you tell us? And at that moment, I made a decision. I'm going to change this area of my life. And so I told them that. I said, you know, next time you see me, I'll be a different person. And when I am, you're going to have to listen to everything I say because it works. And I got off stage, having made a determined decision. Now, truth is, I didn't know if I was ever coming back. But it was a real decision, okay? And then the most amazing thing happened. A number of speakers, we went out to dinner afterwards. And we're sitting there, and I'm thinking, it's kind of late. I don't really think I should be eating. And someone ordered, you know, like a basket of fries to pass around. And I'm looking, and I'm just like, yeah, you know, I'm good. So I said, no, just have a couple fries. I'm like, no, I'm good. He goes, no, don't just have a few. And I'm like, look, you heard what I just said on stage, right? And then so we'll just have one. That's different. But I paid it no mind, and I was focused. I knew what to do. I knew how to diet. I knew how to work out. I just wasn't doing it. Wasn't properly motivated. So I got on it. I started working. I started immediately losing weight because I was going the extreme part of this thing, but I was motivated to do it. And then my friends started saying interesting things to me. Tony, you look like you dropped weight. Yeah, about 12 pounds. Oh, it's probably water weight. You'll gain it back. That's interesting. And I would hear these things over and over again. And then I got the call, hey, Tony, we're doing a follow-up event, and we just want the main speaker and you. You'll be back in Bermuda in 3 months. Glad I'd started. So now I'm really cranking and I'm really going. But all of my friends are still saying the same things. But 3 months later, I'm down 40 pounds. I said, okay, now none of my clothes fit. So I got to go buy some clothes. So I went to a very well-known place to get some suits. So I'm talking to the salesman, and he's like, so what do you need? I need to get 3 suits. I'm thinking of blue, black, whatever. He goes, oh, 3? He goes, yeah, I got a big event in Bermuda, and none of my stuff fits. He goes, why not? Oh, I lost a bunch of weight. Well, how much did you lose? About 40 pounds. How long did it take you? About 3 months, goes, oh, you shouldn't buy clothes now. You're going to gain that weight back. Wait. Let me get this straight. You're willing to give up your commission to have me be it just blew my mind. But I paid it no attention. I went to Bermuda, did the other event, came back, and I was sitting in the basement with one of my friends who had said a couple of those things. And he said, you know, Tony, I got to be honest with you. You changing took away all of my excuses of why I can't change. And that's when it hit me. The problem is not that you have other people in your comfort zone. The problem is that you are part of other people's comfort zones. I'll say that again. The problem is not that you have other people in your comfort zone. The problem is that you are part of other people's comfort zones, and they are used to you being just the way you are. And so the minute you decide to step out of your comfort zone, you move their comfort zone. And almost reflexively, like, give me my stuff back. And that's why it always seems like when you want to change, there's haters. There's people that are almost like they're put there to discourage you. Like, I thought we were cool, but this is how you're acting. And the truth is, they don't even realize they're doing it. I might as well just say this. We're family now. The leadership lesson. One of the things I learned, there are people who have the position of leader, but there are other people in this very room who are what I call opinion leaders. You're the people who others go to, right? If you're trying to figure out who they are, first start off with who's got the candy dish. Just saying, it's an indicator. It's not absolute. It's not binary, but here's what happens. You're walking down like, oh, you got candy? Can I have a piece? Oh, sure. And all of a sudden you take a little piece of candy and you're good. And then, later you start like diverting your whole path so you can go by and get some candy. And then one day you're like, man, it would be great if you had Butterfingers. And a week later there's Butterfingers there. Like, oh my gosh. And so all of a sudden you're kind of going there. And then you have a bad day. You come in and it's all over your face. They're like, are you okay? But they don't say it like everybody else says, are you okay? They say it in a way that it kind of touches you, and you start just kind of spilling stuff out that you had no intention of sharing, and they're there for you, and you have your little Dr. Phil moment, and you're all good, and now all of a sudden you're bonded to them. If you're an opinion leader, make sure you're helping people through change. Because what I've learned is that when you're going through change, you can either go to people who will help you to be comfortable or people who will help you to change. You can go to people who will help you achieve results or people who will help you achieve relief. And in those situations, that comfort is not to your long-term benefit. Because sometimes we have to be uncomfortable. And it happens within our relationships. And so we have to make really tangible decisions about our relationships. Because, if you think about it, when we're under stress and our emotions are all whacked out and our thinking's messed up, it starts to mess with us, doesn't it? We start to feel insecure. We start to feel like, start to feel like we can't. I'm sorry, I think I got some in my shoe. Give me just a second here. All right. So, so we feel like we're the only one, right? And so, is it warm in here to you guys? I'm sorry, I'm a little warm. I got to take this thing off. Oh, man, I'm hot. Oh my gosh. Oh, So you guys never feel this way. Is that what you're telling me? You never have moments where you doubt yourself? You never have moments where you go back and you relive the hurts of your past? You never have moments, an audience this size, statistically, a number of people have been abused, whether it's bullying or whether it's sexually. And it doesn't affect you? Is that what you're trying to tell me? A number of us have had relationship issues. You're trying to tell me it doesn't affect us? See, my guess is that the majority of us are like this. And the problem is we all do the same thing. We cover it back up, and we act normal, and so we start to think that we're the only ones. And that's why some of us suffer from imposter syndrome. We feel like everyone else has it together, but not us. And the challenge is this, after I put my shoe on. The challenge is this. If you go to the wrong person when you're this vulnerable, it's going to do some damage, right? And that's why we're selective. That's why we don't always let people see. I was in Bermuda with Les Brown, the motivational speaker. And he said the coolest thing to me. He said, OQP. I want you to say it with me. 3 letters. OQP. OQP. I said, OQP, what's that? Yeah, only quality people. You have to be selective. I've had to look at people and say to myself, I can't afford to have you in my comfort zone. I like you, but I can't. And I've had to look in the workplace and look at my associates and say, there are people here who are trying to help me to be better, and there are people that don't even realize it, but every time we interact, it's like we're in competition. OQP. And I also had to realize there are people that come to me and want me to influence them and want me to help them. And for them, I have to be OQP. I can't in the moment say, but I don't want to put our friendship on the line by telling them the truth. What kind of friend are we if we can't tell someone the truth? Or, I got to see this person every day. We work together, and I know they're totally wrong, but I know they can't handle it. You may need to be able to find a way to say it in which they can't handle it. They can handle it. But here's the problem. Don't be their enabler, because we'll look for it. When you feel like this, you'll look for it. And a lot of us feel this way, don't we? And so it's our relationships. Choose your relationships wisely. Have strong relationships. Make sure that when we work together, we do it in a powerful and productive way so that we're all benefiting from it. Because here's the problem. We're all in the same boat. And so what we need is after we hear we're all going to change, and it's bobblehead night, and then we walk out, well, I'm not doing that, are you? Well, actually, I think it's kind of a good idea. And that we find out the right information so we can fill in the blanks, so we can help each other. Because it's not enough to be able to get through change. We need to bring other people with us. I was with Dave Sanderson a month ago. Do you remember a few years ago when that plane landed in the Hudson in New York? Dave Sanderson was the last person out. In fact, a lot of the pictures in the paper are of him kind of, because as he's getting out, they're like, hold on to the boat because the plane is sinking. And we were talking and he was sharing with me that, hey, he wasn't thinking about being a hero or whatever. He was actually close to the exit door, the emergency exit, but then he saw someone who needed help. And then it just took over him and he began helping other people. Because he knew, he could get out, but could they? Can't be just on leadership to lead change. All of us have influence. All of us have power. Let's help each other. I think I'm stuck. I can go without the slides. I'm good. One last thing. Here's why it's really important for us to be able to lead change, or to thrive during change. If you don't, you get stuck. So a number of years ago, I found myself driving in Wisconsin. And we were in an interesting situation because we had to go to a company meeting. It was one of these company retreats. You know, the retreats where you do more work than retreat. You guys know what I'm talking about probably. So we're driving on our way up there, and we had two problems. Problem number one, we had no reservations. And in a day before smartphones and online booking, we just had to figure it out. But problem number two is a little more significant. You see, a few years earlier, my wife and I decided to leave our comfortable, well-paying corporate jobs to work in the world of nonprofit. Now, there's only one problem with nonprofit. It's nonprofit. There's no money. I looked at our W-2. I had no idea. We took a 67% cut in pay while living in downtown Chicago 3 weeks after getting married. Yes, I'm like, ooh, it's like I hit you in the stomach, right? Yeah, I lived it, okay? I trust me, I know. And so there wasn't much we could afford. So driving up the highway, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. I'm like, I was in corporate America. I know we can't afford that place. Not that one either. No, I know. And then I saw the sign. It was a sign that meant cheap and safe. Motel 6. I was like, all right. So we pull up into the Motel 6. Never stayed in one before, but I'm like, first time for everything. And we go in. You can imagine our shock when I realized we were in the middle of a tourist destination during the summer. We couldn't afford Motel 6. So as I'm talking to the person at the front desk, my business associate, he turns to one of the other workers and they tell him, hey, our housekeeper actually just bought a motel. We can call her and see if she can get you in. We called her, and shockingly, she gave us a price that we could afford. So we got back in our car and drove to a part of the Wisconsin Dells I had never seen before. So this place looked like where someone's going to get axe murdered. Okay? So we pull up, you know, so my friend and I, we get out, our wives and young children are in the car, we lock the doors, we go to the front, we ring the bell. We rang the bell. That should tell you a lot, right? And out came the creepiest. Did you ever see the movie Psycho? Psycho walked right out in front of us. And the worst part is, like, she was really nice. It would have been better if she was, like, you know, had Eye of Newt or something. But the fact that she was, like, nice made it even worse. So we're talking, oh, it's so great to see you. Looking forward to it. And so my associate pulls out his credit card. I'm like, whoa. How about if we see the rooms first? So sure. So she takes us on a tour of the room. So opens the door. So we walk in and we're looking and she goes, and she's, you know, so proud of it. He goes, there's the bed, you know, there's a toilet that works. There's a, and I'm like, and all of the time in my mind I'm thinking, something's missing. I can't put my finger on it, but something is missing. And right at the end she said, so, you know, any questions? And that's when it hit me. I knew what it was. And I asked her and I said, do you have any phones in the room? And she looked back at me with them beady little eyes of hers. And she said, honey, this ain't the Motel 6. You know, for years I've thought to myself, not only how did we get in that situation, but how did she get to the point where the Motel 6 became this unattainable goal? I mean, it has its uses. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Motel 6 is bad. But you don't start off a dream with what you're not. You start off with what you are, what you can be. But you know what? if you can't take a hit, and if you don't reprogram your mind, and you don't have good relationships, only quality people, it will continually dilute your ability to be resilient and to change. And you know what will happen? When the next change is announced, you go, this will fall apart just like the last one. And you'll come in with a negative attitude. Where instead, we need to be the ones that not only survive, but we thrive during times of disruption and change. Cool? I'm done. Thank you.